Hey guys, this is James bringing you InBetweenIsode number 36. So today, as I talked about a little bit in the last InBetweenIsode of Essence of Tea's Guafang Jai from 2014, today I am bringing on the top dog from Two Dog, which is the Last Thoughts. This one's from 2014. He just released the 2015 Harvest, which also included the Last Thoughts, and I've been told that they're a little bit different from one another. So I'd be very curious to try that tea in comparison to this one as well. But I really like this tea a lot. I had probably about 40 or 50 young teas supposedly from Iwu in the past month, and there were only a few in this upper price range, but I would definitely say that this is probably the one that I preferred the most, and that's not to say that I would say it's the best tea ever or anything like that, but towards my preferences, I like this tea a whole lot. Okay, so similar to last episode, we're going to try to get through 8 brews. So the water is already hot. As you can see that steam coming out. It is hot here in Seattle at about 8:15 in the morning, and we are going to drink some tea. And for those of you that say this tea is expensive, number one, you're right. Compared to just about every other tea, well, compared to a lot of other teas, this tea is really expensive, but I do really think that this tea may be worth it depending on your situation. And so I suspect there's a couple different types of buyers when it comes to these sorts of very expensive teas. There's the richer people, or the people that can really afford it, and so they could probably ignore whatever I have to say about price because they can do what they want. And then there's people that might like, so the people that could afford a cake, and then there's also people that could save up to afford a cake. There are people that may just want to sample this tea, and I'd say that's a very different category because dropping $34 rather than $435, sweet sort of brown sugary, like browner nose to it, I guess. And then and so, like, spending $34 on a 25-gram sample and having 3 to 4 sessions with it, I think is a very reasonable way, and that comes into under $10 a session. So think about that guy eating his turkey sandwich while watching TeaDB. Okay, so we are going to do steep number 1. And for those of you that are worried that if you sample it, and you might be really tempted to buy it, I'm afraid I don't have much of a consolation for you, because you might be tempted to buy it. I would probably fit into that category that probably should not buy it, but really wants to. It's a little bit more vegetalness creeping into that aroma. It's been about a year, a little over a year since this was pressed. And steep it once more. I'm trying a slightly different editing technique this time, just to cut a little bit around the edges and cut a little bit of that fat out where we're waiting for water to cool down or heat up and stuff like that. So here is steep number 1. I'm going to choke on my last thoughts. I guess it's a fairly apt name. So, a couple things. The taste itself is very sweet, very pleasant. The main attributes I would say of the tea right now are the bigness in the mouth. which is a weird way to put it. So huge body. Siwin has described this as thick like motor oil, which I love. I think that's a great way to describe it. This tea is really thick. And the other thing I would say is the depth of flavor. So pay attention to how this tea sits in the mouth and just goes down. You can feel this tea going far deeper than you would for a whole lot of teas. You can feel it go almost all the entire way down your throat and into your chest. Something that I absolutely love about this tea. It feels weird to say those are the two attributes, and neither one being particularly about the flavors, which I simply described as sweet, but I think those are the main reasons why I really do like this tea. It's delicious. So here is steep number 2, and I have heated this water off camera, so I'm going to go ahead and do steep number 3. How would I get a feel for this one? So it's a bit different. The depth of flavor is definitely still there, but I don't know, I want to say it's a little bit more vegetal. A little bit more vegetalness has creeped into it. I'll have a smell here. Yeah, so a little bit more grassy vegetalness has creeped into the aroma as well. So you can definitely get really dynamic sessions out of this guy. This is probably my 5th or 6th time saying screw you to my wallet and drinking this tea. Yeah, so a little bit more of those sugar cane, vegetal notes coming out of it here. And I can just feel the sweetness in my throat. It's really wonderful. And also pay attention to how it sort of sits in your mouth. Right now my cheeks are sort of swelling with feeling the tea. I'm starting to salivate very quickly. Delicious. And pay attention to like this viscosity that you can almost just see in the cha hai. Alright. Cheers, guys. Slurp hard. So, there's a lot more bitterness and astringent notes that have crept into it around this time, and that's really what I've found in my experience sort of on these middle steeps. You can get a little bit of that. It's not sort of like the really, get out of here, bitterness and astringency, but sort of the stuff that's accompanied with like a deep taste as well. You probably don't want to oversteep this, but it's not like a bad trait, I would say, and in fact I'd say it's a pretty normal trait for a tea of a year or so to have. It'd be kind of odd if it didn't, and I'd wonder particularly how it would age. So, it's continued to have a very solid body. Yeah, it's sometimes it's difficult to describe this tea because it changes every time. Like usually when you're drinking a tea, you'll be like, oh, the previous steep was like this, and this steep it's really similar plus like this one extra thing. But this tea almost completely, each one is a little bit different texturally. I wouldn't say this is as big as the first steep, in terms of like motor oil type thickness, but it's still really big in the mouth. You can still feel it going down the throat. The astringency is definitely the most noticeable thing that has crept into the tea. Alright, we're going to let that sit for a second. Yeah, so take notes on this tea. Like, for each steep, pay attention, drink it with a friend, drink it by yourself. Yeah, it's a really fun one to session, and definitely for those that worry about their stomach for this raw pu'erh, I haven't noticed anything close to stomach irritation for this tea, which I found to be a very tea-specific thing, at least for myself. Alright, we are going to sip away. So steep number 4. So the viscosity at the front of the mouth is a little bit thinner than it was, and then it kind of gets bigger and bigger, and you can feel it come down your throat, which is what I've been talking about. I'm getting very, very thirsty, so the astringency, this steep still had a bit of astringency in it, is of the type that just makes you salivate a whole lot and want some water. I feel great right now. I have a hard time with chi, just like noticing it, and even the harder part is noticing it while you're being filmed. But this tea has definitely been one of those teas that I've hit that chi checkbox before. Yeah, so just close your eyes and let that liqueur just go down your stomach and just feel it go just all the way down. Off screen, I reheated the water and made steep number 5 and 6, which are sitting here and here, respectively. So the leaves are still very warm, and I'm going to smell them right now. So a little bit of that vegetalness has left the tea that I kind of detected on maybe steeps 2, 3, and a little bit on 4. It's a little bit more nutty. There's still sort of a fresh floral character to it that that's a little bit different from what I was detecting in the earlier steeps. Not sure exactly how to describe that. Maybe it's closer to floral / pine. But yeah, a little bit of that nuttiness for sure. Okay, well, here we go. Steep number 5. So, the tea is still slightly astringent, but I think it's starting to wear a little bit thin in that regard, so I think I can start probably pushing these steep times a little bit more, just to get more of the body, more of that throat feel. So this steep is not at all bitter or astringent. It sort of has that more basic notes that I was getting on the first steep, a very brown, sugary type sweetness to it. Throughout this whole, I described the first steep as very sweet. Throughout these first 6 steeps, all of these, like bitterness and astringency, they've been well balanced with a lot of these sweeter notes. Especially, well, I've talked about the throat taste a lot, but yeah, even in the mouth, just a lot of those bitter and astringent notes. It helps to have that sort of sweeter notes to balance it out. Alright, so we are going to try to push this a little bit. So maybe for 30 seconds, 40 seconds, something like that. Yeah. So I've been told that Paul, or Two Dog, is pressing another tea that is supposedly in the same sort of caliber as Last Thoughts, and when I heard that, my wallet shuddered a little bit, just worried about being tempted to buy it. But I will definitely be sampling the 2015 version of this tea. I've heard that sort of the differentiating factor was just rain more in the harvest. Supposedly it was quite bone dry last year, which contributed to the tea being the way it is. And frankly, I know very little about agriculture. I just am more focused on the tea drinking aspects of it, but that is interesting. So I'm going to drink steep number 7 before I decide how long I want to steep number 8 for. So right now my throat just feels incredible. There's so much throat feel right now on there. So if you're wondering kind of like what Marshall and people are talking about when they're like, oh, it's about like the throatiness and stuff like that, and you're like, I don't get this in my $5 Shug One tool, or like or whatever else you might be drinking. These are the type of teas that it happens for, and I haven't talked once about Gushu or anything like that, but I mean those are some of the reasons that people tend to target these really old trees, because they have a lot of these really pleasant characteristics. Alright, so let's try this pushed a little bit, number 7 steep. Alright, so it's quite astringent. This is easily the most astringent brew. I think I may have jumped the gun slightly in hitting this with more steep time so soon. But you can definitely, it's interesting to hit it so hard, as there's still a lot of positive characteristics of the tea. It's definitely more on the bitter, nutty, astringent end of the spectrum, with a little bit fewer sweeter notes. The body is obviously great and big. You can definitely feel that sort of thickness in your mouth. I will say that the body has thinned out a little bit from the first couple steeps, which is more or less to be expected. Alright, and here is steep number 8, so I'll probably just do this for 20-25 seconds. And so, similar to the Guafeng Jai, you can pretty much count on me continuing to steep this tea out and enjoying it throughout the day. It probably will last at least for, I don't know, 15 or 16 steeps. It's not quite as long steeping as that Guafeng Jai, but it hits a little bit harder, quicker. Okay, so it's sort of returned to form, more similar to the 5th or 6th tea. It's good body. The stringent factor is still there. It will go away a little bit. I don't know, probably pretty soon, maybe on like the 9th or 10th steep. I'd guess that you could push this tea a little bit further for a minute or so without getting it to be unpleasant or anything like that. But highly recommend this tea to anyone who can afford it, or anyone that can just afford a sample, which frankly I think is most people that shop at White2Te. If you're worried about being tempted, then you should absolutely be worried about that. But get a sample. It's a great one to try. It's very informative about what upper end tea can be like. And these teas are really small production, so it's hard to say what the price will do in the future. If you look back at some of those old posts from like Marshall or Hobbs drinking Pu'erh, even just a few years ago in 2011, but especially in places like 2008 and 2009, and you can see them being like, oh, this tea is $50? That's way too much. Well, it's 2015 now, and $50 would have gotten you a lot more back then. So I don't know what's going to happen to these teas. They are susceptible for sure to a lot of market forces because the production of them is a very finite thing. So try this tea while you can. I don't know if you'll be able to try it for the same amount of money in 5 or 10 years. And thank you guys for watching. Cheers.